All right, let's see if our mic's even working here. Hang on just a second. We've had a few technical difficulties lately, I should say. So we'll wait and see if this catches up. Well, we've got a mic working. Okay. All right. Well, I believe that I think I may have a lot of the issues figured out, but not all of them, so we're just gonna keep rolling. First, we're going to go over to Ryan Larsen's page on the morning feed. We're going to go over some missing Monday cases. It's super late. It's not even Monday anymore in some places, but we're just still going to do this. The cases still need to be covered and they still need attention. So, welcome to the morning feed where we have all kinds of technical issues happening. Um, but we're going to cover 3 cases today, 2 out of Georgia, 1 Nebraska, Ryan Larsen, Tiffany Foster, and also Paul and Brandon Wade. So let's get into all of that. So I'm sure that a lot of people have heard of those cases, and some people probably have not. So let's make sure that we cover this well so everybody has all the relevant information. And yes, I am fixing that right now with the sizing. I noticed that as well. Thank you so much. Okay, here we go. So, this is Ryan Larson's page on themorningfeed.com. You can go over there and check that out anytime. Um, Ryan Larson, he has brown hair, hazel eyes. He's 5'8". He's really tall. Considering at the time that measurement was taken, he was 12 years old, about 125 pounds. So he's a good sized kid. Um, Ryan Larson is missing from La Vista, Nebraska. So if you have information, you can contact 402 331 1582. He was last seen around the Southfield apartment complex in La Vista around 1:45 in the afternoon on May 17th, and this is all the way back in 2021, so not super far back, but not recent by any means. The La Vista Police Department is searching for Ryan still, and they're still investigating his disappearance. You'll be able to see in some of our reporting that Ryan Larson's family did make a push in court to try and basically not exactly put a halt to the investigation, but it would have essentially, because they were seeking to have him declared deceased and they did not win that bid. So the investigation has lived on, luckily. So on May 17th of 2021, Ryan Larson walked out of the La Vista West Elementary School and he just disappeared. He has not been seen since that day that anybody is aware of. Now, Ryan is described as being helpful, chatty, creative. His sister said that he is the kindest little boy. Ryan is diagnosed with medical conditions that make his disappearance concerning. There are certain things that Ryan did not do for himself, like some other 12-year-olds do for themselves. So that also makes things even more concerning since he is a little bit reliant, a little dependent on just needing some assistance. So he's believed to have left school that day at 11:30 in the morning. A neighbor claims to have seen Ryan at 1:30 p.m. at the apartment complex where Ryan lived with his family. Now, the whole it's believed that he left at 11:30 a.m. and then he's not seen until 1:30. That's one of the reasons that the family was trying to make a bid to have him declared deceased because they wanted to file a lawsuit against the school over the fact that he's missing and that the school just let him walk out. Now, we'll get into it more later in the article, but this is not the first time that Ryan had disappeared from school or tried to run off. I don't know if I really want to say run away, but tried to run off basically. Um, so he was also carrying an umbrella with him, something that he was known to do, and that umbrella was later found without Ryan anywhere around. A resident of the apartment complex, they told police that around 1:45 in the afternoon they saw Ryan near a dumpster at the apartment complex and that he had his umbrella with him. So then later it's found and he's not with the umbrella. So after his disappearance, the initial search included over 100 law enforcement officers, local neighborhoods, businesses, lakes. So much was searched looking for Ryan. Ground searches were performed on land and in water. Local law enforcement stated that the case is still active, information is still being gathered, and that data was still coming in at the time. And this is, even a year after his search, there was still information because in 2021, search warrants for digital information were not coming in as quickly. So it took some time. And then once you get it, you have to analyze all of that information and then narrow it down to what you actually need and then take what you actually need and analyze that. So it's a lot. So like I said, ground searches, air searches, land, water, you name it. All these different searches were happening and nothing was turning up. Local law enforcement, they spoke to media on the anniversary of his disappearance and they stated that they were aware of Ryan well before he disappeared. For roughly the past 2 years, actually, Ryan had allegedly left school up to like 6 times prior to his disappearance. Now, the same law enforcement who claimed to know Ryan due to their prior interactions with him, they also stated that they believe Ryan would not have gone far without a fight. Um, and it seems like relevant information. They've had close contact with him and they would know what his behavior is like when he's encountered and different things. So they don't think that this would have been easy to do. I'll put it that way. Um, Ryan's mother claimed that she believed Ryan would not go willingly with a stranger or get into a car of somebody that he did not know. Now, local law enforcement also stated that in August of last year, they issued warrants for local phone activity from the day that Ryan disappeared. Chief Bob Louston said, "We've been working with them to narrow down that large batch of information." So, like I was just talking about, but their timeline, they're two different timelines. That we're working on this large batch of information to work it down, but our timeline and their timeline, they're two different timelines. So Louston also stated that some people have muddled the waters. He stated that we've had people that haven't been totally forthcoming with us regarding information, and that we've had people that have lied to us about information, so that's been frustrating. And like I said, at the time these statements were given, it was almost a year that he had been missing. So Ryan was last seen at the apartment complex where he lived with his family, technically. And a neighbor from the complex, they spotted Ryan and um, they passed that information on to law enforcement. Of course, the Southfield apartment complex where he lived with his mother at the time of his disappearance, it's a half a mile from where the school is, where he originally had walked out of and initially disappeared. Ryan managed to make it from the school back to the apartment complex. So he does have understanding of his surroundings and And it doesn't sound like he's too willing to get in the car with a stranger, typically of his normal behavior. So it's interesting. Now, when they mention that, some people haven't been completely forthcoming, there have been some very interesting statements made um, by people who are very close to Ryan before his disappearance, and they're questionable. There's just no other way to look at it. Information was shared about Ryan that later, didn't appear to be true, and so that is highly frustrating. We have a timeline on our website underneath his case brief where you can view all of that information, going up to 2022, where there was a renewed push for search efforts. Um, and you can go all the way back to 2021 when he first was reported missing. The media, the family's lawsuit or attempted lawsuit. We have several articles here at the bottom of his page that you can look at. So that is Ryan Larsen. And just make sure you take a good look at him. And if you were in the La Vista area or any other areas where you believe you've seen Ryan Larsen, you can call again La Vista Police Department at 402-331-1582. The best way to help Ryan Larsen is to share his flyers. Share any media, whether it be new or old. There's not a lot of new media. The only time you tend to see media on cases like this is when there's an anniversary, a renewed push, a new tip that leads to information, being requested by law enforcement again. So it's important that we keep sharing his flyer. Ryan has a small army of people online that share his information out on a regular basis. So that's, I'm sure, very much appreciated. And so he does have his little circle of people, but I feel that that circle has dwindled down a lot in the last year, with really no information going out. So that's of course difficult. Um, so let's go over here to Tiffany Foster. And a lot of people have heard us talk about Tiffany before, so um, I know that some people do know her story and know what happened there. But this is another 2021 case. And in this, Tiffany Foster, a mother in Georgia, she was also a student at the time of criminal justice. She was reported missing from Coweta County in Georgia. So we're going to go over some of that information. And then I have another Georgia case I would like to talk about at the end of this for Paula and Brandon Wade. So let's go over here. This is Tiffany Foster. If you're looking on your screen, you see her awesome face right there. Tiffany is extremely loved by the community in Coweta County, extremely loved by her family, to the point that the suspect in her case, the primary suspect, actually put in one of his letters to the court about the fact that, the community has so positively responded to her disappearance, as if that was a bad thing for his case. And I guess it is, because there's public exposure. People know about the case. So before we get started, I just want to say there is a there is a criminal court process happening with this case. Tiffany Foster's alleged suspects have been taken into custody. They have been sitting in jail in Georgia awaiting trial. Um, One of the people was her fiance at the time. The other one is a neighbor of the fiance. So he essentially helped the fiance out. And that court process is pending. We're still waiting for it to really have any movement at all. It has had no movement at all in a very long time. So we're really, really looking forward to that happening. Reginald Robertson has been sitting in jail regarded to this, or related to this whole matter, almost ever since it happened. Not long after Tiffany disappeared, he was arrested. So we'll get into some more of that too in just a moment. So Tiffany Foster Starks, she goes by Tiffany Starks, also goes by Tiffany Foster. We try to put in here Tiffany Foster Starks so that everybody knows she does go by both names. She was reported missing from Coweta County, Georgia on March the 2nd of 2021. She did not show up for work or school. She could not be reached by her family, her friends, and we're talking coworkers, people she went to school with. Everybody was concerned except for the people you would think would be most concerned, which are, the man that lives with her, who is sharing a home with her. Her children live there. It's, very disturbing that there was very little concern about the fact that Tiffany had disappeared. So shortly after her disappearance, the Coweta County authorities, they were searching for her whereabouts. They held a press conference, and in that press conference, her fiance would make a last minute appearance on camera and plead for Tiffany's safe return. The appearance was kind of chilling. It was very difficult to watch. he I've never seen someone look so guilty in a press conference. And I've seen some pretty guilty looking people, but he looked like a deer in the headlights, and like he wanted to try and control his body language. But he just couldn't. Hang on one second. Let me let these pups are just dying to come in and wreak havoc. Hang on. Okay, I had to let the monsters in. So anyways, so authorities pretty much, they would soon piece together by the late summer of 2021 enough evidence to charge Reginald. And they charged him, they brought him in, and the charges pretty much just sat where they were. And none of the charges were related to her disappearance ish. None of them were related to her current disappearance. I'll say that much. So the charges gave insight to what Tiffany might have been going through and enduring at the time of her disappearance, because the charges were for aggravated assault and kidnapping, but they weren't for aggravated assault and kidnapping for her actual disappearance. They were related to a prior event. So Tiffany's family continued searching for the following 2 years. And as their lives were basically put on hold, more information um, eventually became available, and it was unclear, if Tiffany was actually alive somewhere. And her children, her family, they all just kept pushing, and they didn't give up on where she might be or what might be going on. So for 2 years, the public, the only thing they knew was that there were these violent charges against Reginald, but they didn't really know the rest of the story. And one glaring charge of theft for moving Tiffany's vehicle after her disappearance from Noonan to College Park in Georgia seemed to give everybody the only insight they really needed. He wasn't charged with her disappearance, he wasn't charged with a homicide per se, but they clearly knew that he moved her car. So in 2023, this is all going on in 2022 or 2021. So 2 years later, all the charges against Reginald Robertson were brought in to a new case. They dropped all those charges. They prepared a new case, and they presented it. He was brought before a court for a new arraignment there in Coweta County, and um, he was now going to be charged with her actual disappearance. So in 2023, all charges against him were dropped and then reinstated, essentially with a slew of new charges as well. He's motioned for a change of venue. He has tried to get, as much as he possibly could together to fight this, it seems. He is having to be at the mercy of a public defender, but there's some absolutely amazing public defenders out there, so no reason why he shouldn't get a proper fair trial, except for the fact that he's in Georgia and he's been sitting there for a long time. And they're known to do some not so great things on cases. I don't know if you hear the pup in the background, but the pup is doing some crazy things back there. So in 2023, like I said, they brought a new case against Reginald, and a new name was introduced to the public as Reginald Robertson's co defendant, Jeremy Walker Sr., their neighbor, was accused of assisting Reginald with concealing Tiffany's death. So now that's kind of where the case sits, is we're waiting on both Reginald and Jeremy Walker Sr. to be brought to trial. The Georgia justice system is widely backlogged and strained for resources. The process moving forward will likely be slow as we await a final decision. Um, as far as how all of this is going to move forward, it seems like they might be torn between a jury trial, a bench trial at the moment. So a jury trial is where you bring your peers in, they get to decide if you are guilty or not. A bench trial is where a judge is going to decide your fate, whether you're guilty or not, if there's enough evidence, if that evidence is proper. Um, it seems as though Reginald may be considering taking a bench trial, and that's very interesting. He thinks that if he cannot get a change of venue, that he cannot get a proper jury trial because of Tiffany's name being in the community so much. And honestly, I don't think it's about Tiffany and her name nearly as much as that press conference. Everybody in the community watched that press conference as Reginald stood like a deer in the headlights, and it was like he was trying to control his body language and control everything. And the more he tried to control everything, the more you could just see how much of a problem was going on there. Um, it was either a man who had a lot of guilt or complete stage fright. It was a very odd situation. So anyhow, Tiffany is still missing, and that's what everybody needs to know, because her face, her flyer, newscasts, any information, any local things that are happening in her honor, all of that still needs to be followed and shared, because she's still missing. Even if they get justice in this case, if they get convictions out of this case, she's still missing. Her family still does not have peace over this, and they won't until she is found. So if you go down to the bottom of our page, you can see we have photos there. She was working security. She was a criminal justice student. She was a mom, and she was a very, very active person, living life to the best that she could, getting ready to graduate. We have a timeline here below that goes from the most recent to the oldest information in her case, and also some media links there too. So there is a lot of information out there about Tiffany, but the reporting has died down just so much, and it's just awful to see that, but that is what has happened. And if we go over here, I'm going to go over to Paula and Brandon Wade, and we're going to switch over to their case really quickly. And if we go here to the bottom, let's see if we can get this to work. We've been having a couple of sound issues, so we just want to see if we can get this to work or not. And I think we might still be having a sound issue, actually. So we'll just wait. I'm going to fix that sound issue for our next live, and we can figure all of that out. Okay. So Paula and Brandon Wade, the disappearance, the anniversary of their disappearance is coming up, and it's coming up quickly, October. So their family is gearing up to do all the things that a family does when they have not seen their loved one for over 2 decades. So this October will be 22 years that Paula and Brandon have been missing. And as their family gets ready, we're kind of getting ready over here too to just be ready to talk about their case, get ready to talk about them, and what all has happened in the last 2 decades, over 2 decades. So Paula has a very interesting background. She's lived all over the world. She comes from a family that is a military family, and they have they have lived all over. I'm always really interested in when I hear stories about Paula Wade, because there's always something new that you just never knew about or you never heard about. I remember, hearing about her living in Greece and her family living in Germany, and there's always new interesting things to learn about Paula Wade, and I love that. It also keeps her story interesting, to talk about, because it's great to be able to talk about the interesting things about Paula and not always make it only about what happened after October of 2002, because that is not her whole life, that is not Brandon's whole life. But let's get more into their case first. So Brandon is Paula's son, and at the time they were living in Valdosta, Georgia. Paula was married to Lance Wade, who's also in the military. Paula was not in the military, but her family was, and then she married into the military life. And her husband was in the Air Force, remained in the Air Force for a long time after her disappearance as well. But she was in the Air Force, and they had 3-year-old Brandon together. And he was stationed, her husband was stationed in Valdosta, Georgia at the time of her disappearance at the Moody Air Force Base. Not at the time of her disappearance, but right before her disappearance. That's why they were in Valdosta, because they were stationed there. So later on, Lance would be stationed at Shaw Air Force Base out in South Carolina. And he would have to pick up and move and go out to Shaw Air Force Base. And so that's where he actually physically was at the time of Paula's disappearance. Paula, on the other hand, um, as a lot of people know, the military is not a rich, lavish lifestyle or anything. And, you still got to make ends meet. Everybody has to do what they have to do to support their family. That's why a lot of military families, have to live apart for long stretches. And that can be really difficult. But essentially, Paula was getting ready to also leave Valdosta. She was packing up their apartment, and she was going to move back towards family in Florida. And then her and Lance were going to kind of figure out later on where everybody was going to end up and what would be going on later on. But for the time being, he's stationed out here now in South Carolina. She needs to try to get a transfer with work. So she, for the time being, was going to be transferred to Florida, closer to her family. Um, right before that, though, before her transfer was due, and she would be moving, she disappeared, and nobody really knows exactly when she disappeared. She's reported missing on Monday, October 14th of 2002. But that is just when she was reported missing. She was seen for sure the last time that anybody knows of on the 12th of October. So 2 days prior to that, leaving work is when she was actually last seen by anybody who has ever admitted to having seen her. Um, Paula and Brandon's story is very, very difficult as far as their life after October of 2002, because by all accounts, it was not completely. Um, I don't think the situation at the time was completely assessed and analyzed properly. Hang on just one second. Sorry, the pup was being a little crazy. So I don't think it was analyzed and completely looked at for what it was. I don't think that local law enforcement completely understood what Paula's family meant. Hang on one second. Okay, that crazy pup. She is wild tonight. I'm gonna get her back there, trying to tear everything up. She's like, pay attention to me. Don't be talking about crime and stuff. Um, okay. Sorry about that. So, anyways, um, the last time Paula was seen was the 12th, and what I was getting at with local law enforcement and the issues surrounding the initial assessment of what was happening is, you know, Paula, the family communicated to law enforcement at the time that she was reported missing and said, look, we didn't hear from her on Sunday. And I'm sure that any law enforcement officers, like, you didn't. Okay, so you're trying to tell me that you didn't hear from your daughter, your grown daughter who's married, who has a child and a full-time job and lives out of town on Sunday. So, you know what? Okay. But they didn't realize probably the gravity of that. Paula Wade spoke to her family, her parents specifically, every Sunday. All of their kids did. They all had their own times to talk with the family, to talk with the parents, to get caught up. What are the grandkids doing? What's going on? Just the general chit chat of everyday life of what's going on within a family. They did that. They had a set time with each kid where they would do that on a regular basis, once a week, set time. Paula's time was Sunday evenings. They were not late for those phone calls. They were not early. They were right on time every time. So when they didn't get that phone call, they, of course, are concerned. And it's odd. It's never happened before. She's never missed a Sunday phone call ever in her life. And law enforcement probably didn't understand the complete gravity of that at the time and just how bombshell that was of a piece of information, but the family did. They understood. However, they didn't raise the alarm bells on Sunday because they also understood, well, she does have a 3-year-old and she is getting ready to move. We're getting ready to go down there and help her move. I'm sure everything's fine. She's probably just trying to get everything together and get ready to make the move. Now, the one thing I haven't mentioned yet is at the time, Paula had a roommate. So when her husband Lance, and even before that, they had roommates before that. It was not like some out of character thing for them to have a roommate. They had roommates living there when they were all living together. So, but at the time when the husband Lance went to South Carolina to be transferred to Shaw Air Force Base. At that time, a new roommate came into the picture. Of course, Paula would need to split the rent and things like that, like they had pretty much always done. And so she got a new roommate. And so at the time of her disappearance, she had a roommate. Now, he's been mentioned in the media in Georgia, Florida, various places. He's been mentioned in connection to this case. So me dropping his name is not necessarily a bombshell. Um, but so at the time, a man by the name of Marcus Burrows, he was also living in the apartment. There is no direct evidence as to this man having any involvement whatsoever to Paula's disappearance. Um, to this day, 2 decades later, we don't have specific information that ties him to anything. And I say that because a lot of people in the media have questioned that. Like, what about this roommate? A lot of people online, when you go online, the media, two things they always ask about Paula and Brandon's case. They ask the family, is law enforcement doing anything? And then they also ask, oh, what about that roommate? So those are two things I wanted to address. I do believe that there was a very much a 2002 mindset to this case when it was worked. A small town mindset was given to this case of 2002, and it wasn't completely taken seriously. I don't think they realized that this person did not just walk away with her child. So let's backtrack here and kind of get back to that day of their disappearance. Um, Marcus, the roommate, he was questioned. He was actually detained close to the time that Paula Wade would have disappeared, like shortly after, not long after he was detained. He was not detained during the time of her disappearance, though. But a lot of people comment about him online as well as law enforcement and just say, what about this roommate? Well, we have no direct evidence. We'd be forever grateful to speak to him at any point if he'd be willing to um, share what he thinks about the situation. But, does what does he feel could have possibly happened? I'd be very interested to know that. Um, I would say, given the time and some of the environment that he was surrounded by, I'd say he probably did not feel very comfortable speaking with law enforcement or anyone else at the time. But I think it would be great to hear from him and hear his opinion. So not only would I, encourage people to share Paula and Brandon's flyer, but if anybody knows this man and thinks that he has um, some significant details to share, we'd love to talk to him. We also don't want to be intrusive on his life, but so let's get back to this a little bit here. So Marcus Burrows was 19 at the time of Paula and Brandon's disappearance, and he was initially unable to be found by law enforcement for questioning, but later he was located because he had been arrested for an unrelated incident. So that's why he was detained. He provided them a false name. Like I said, Paul and Brandon were already missing at the time. An acquaintance of Marcus also informed police later on that a location where he thought remains could be located. Law enforcement only found deer bones when they went out there and they searched the site. Now, I'll also just add a caveat. The person who gave the information has a very interesting, maybe slightly checkered past with law enforcement. There could have been a reason why he felt providing information could have helped himself in some kind of way. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's really the reality. Until we actually speak to him as well, we just can't say that. But it seems like it could be an option, a possibility, so we have to keep that in mind as well. But let's get back to the actual day. So um, Paula is seen leaving work on Saturday, October the 12th, 2002. She worked at Sam's Club in Valdosta, Georgia. That's where she was going to get a transfer from one Sam's Club to another. So she was working at Sam's Club in 2002. Um, she leaves work on Saturday, October the 14th, and that is the last time anyone sees her. Now, she did allow for the roommate to use her vehicle sometimes, so I don't know what the driving situation was that day, if he picked her up, if maybe she had the car that day already. Like, we don't know. It's the car was later located at her apartment complex, but that would have been after she left work anyways, so we just really don't know. But basically, she leaves work that Saturday. Sunday, she misses the call with her parents in the evening, which is the first time that ever happens in the entire adult life of Paula Wade. And after that, she ends up missing work on Monday morning. And her coworkers immediately start getting on the phone and calling. And they go to the apartment complex and they're They're nowhere to be found. Paula or Brandon, no one. They knocked on the door. They looked around the parking lot. There's woods that surround the parking lot of the apartment. They looked all around there. Nothing. Could not find Paula and Brandon anywhere. So they finally get in touch with their family and with law enforcement, and they kind of get the ball rolling as far as, what in the world has happened here. So so that all gets started, and I feel like that's kind of where everybody still is today, is what in the world has happened here. But the family has done a ton of work to try and push this forward to get answers as much as they possibly can, which has resulted in some pretty big things for Paula and Brandon, like them being featured on the FBI missing persons website. You can view that if you scroll down here on our website. On their case file, we have all of their information listed down here. The major news stories that they've been featured in, their FBI age progressed photos, um, FBI press release, their NC MEC file, like pretty much all of that stuff, the Charlie Project, they're all over the internet. And that's because their family worked really hard to make it so. Um, they also have paulawade.com, which is where you can go and get information about Paula and Brandon. And you can go, like I said, to the NCMEC, to NamUs, to Polycloss. Like they're all over the place. If you're gonna report a tip about Paula and Brandon, I highly encourage you to reach out to the family through the email address that they have provided or the FBI. So you can also call the NCMEC. They also take tips at 1-800 The Lost, and they do have their case file. However, the FBI, they can be reached at 770-216-3000. You can also submit a tip online, and we have that information here, tips.fbi.gov. Or, like I said, you can do that through the family. You can visit their website at paulawade.com. Um, and I really, really encourage, the family is very, they're very, I'm losing the right word. They're very professional about handling any information regarding Paula and Brandon. That information immediately goes to the proper authorities. They do not try to interject themselves in ways that are um, unbecoming, unprofessional, or anything like that. They're very good resources for sharing information, and then they can also follow up and make sure that that information is looked into. So I really, really encourage people to use that. Let me go and see. I have lost one of the pieces of information on here. Here we go. Right here on our page with their case, find Paula Wade at gmail.com. We have it listed here right in their case file under their case brief. So you can go in there and find that at any time. If you ever come across any information that you would like to share with the family, please do so there at findpaulawade at gmail.com. So that's the gist of their story. There's lots of flyers out here, age progressed photos, the FBI flyers, the NCMEC flyers. The family does ask that if you're going to share information, that it be an official news article, an official flyer. So, they don't want unofficial information, kind of just scattered, because unfortunately sometimes people do get information wrong in this case, and so we just don't, we don't ever want to encourage incorrect information being shared out there, like saying that the roommate was, her boyfriend and things like that. Like none of those things were true. So we just like to make sure that we point that out. Please share official information when it comes to their case. And if you want to help them out, you can share. There's been plenty of news articles out there over the last 2 decades. The last year probably has some of the best ones. USA Today did an absolutely great article on them last year. News Nation featured them with Paula's sister, where Paula's sister is talking about Paula, talking about Brandon, how much Brandon loved to play ball, how cute he was. It just all kinds of great information that you can learn by tuning into that as well. We have all of that linked down in the media section for their page. So we appreciate anybody who comes and shares information about Paula and Brandon. I won't lie, they're one of they're probably one of the cases that I'm more passionate about. I mean, they are. Um, just because I have a very high respect for Paula Wade, who she is, who her family is, um, and I have an absolute disgust for the lack of support, resources, answers, and different things that they have had along the way. They deserve so, so much more. And I hope that the community will continue to learn about this case and share it and get more interested in it, especially during a time when we're seeing it used to be a huge groundbreaking deal if we saw a cold case from 15 years ago, from 20 years ago, from 30 years ago got solved. It used to be huge information, but of course it used to be information like bombshell headline if you like, unalived your children in some kind of way. Unfortunately, both of those things are everyday information now. Um, but that's the great thing is also fortunately we're seeing cold cases solved in the media all the time. Every day there's a flood of new cases where sometimes DNA is helping, sometimes new advancements, but sometimes it's just the fact that they finally got an investigator on the case who was dedicated and wanted to solve it. They just had a hunger to solve it. And that's what it takes. It takes somebody who has the heart, who has the hunger, who has the drive, and the ability to bring the right people in to play in that situation. Because with the right passion and determination, you can accomplish absolutely incredible things. So I hope that the community continues to learn about their case and continues to share because this is very much able to be solved if we just had the right help. There's been some very disturbing commentary regarded to this case when it comes to the effort that's going to be put in order to make sure that it's solved. So I think it's our job. I think it's up to us to make sure that we let everyone know that we want answers for Paula and Brandon, for their family, and for this to move forward. And there's never a better time to be thinking about them than 2 weeks before the anniversary of their disappearance. So in 2 weeks, the official date is on October the 14th. In 2 weeks, Paula and Brandon Wade's family are going to be doing what they do every fall. They're going to be loading up, paying for lodging, paying for travel, um, taking time away from their daily lives in order to load up and drive hours down to Valdosta, Georgia to once again hand out flyers, stand in a parking lot at Sam's Club, talk to anybody that they might be able to talk to that they've never spoken to before. I'm sure that they would love to be on the beach. Maybe they would love to take a vacation or go do something that maybe they want to do in the fall. Maybe actually enjoy the colors and, you know, do something different. So that's what I look forward to. I hope one day that their family is able to pack up in the fall and go somewhere really special and enjoyable and enjoy themselves instead of having to do this every fall because they still need answers and they're not stopping until they get them. So think of them the next 2 weeks as they get ready to load up and head out on this horrific journey that they take every fall to go up there and try to speak to law enforcement, speak to media, speak to anybody that they can find who may have come in contact with Paula while she lived there. She didn't grow up there. Paula's not from Valdosta, Georgia. She just married a man who was stationed there. Her father had also been stationed there, so she was there for a little while, but that's it. She was just there for a little while. Um, and now nobody's seen her for 22 years, or her son, who is now in his 20s. You know, as her sister stated, Brandon's now the age that Paula was when she disappeared. You know, that's devastating. And still no answers. So keep them in mind. We'll have more reporting coming forward in the next couple weeks about Paula and Brandon, and share what the family has going on in Valdosta for the anniversary. Um, we'll share any media and anything new that pops up in the news feed for them. We always like looking. We kind of have an idea sometimes of who might be reporting on their story for the anniversary, and then we always get, a little bit of random ones that pop up. So it's like a little lottery every time you refresh your news feed with their names in there, and seeing, okay, who else is gonna show up for Paula and Brandon this year. Um, so anyways, this was super late. This was later than I planned on it being, and I appreciate anybody who listens to the replay on this and listens to me go on and on about these horrific cases, because your support is sometimes all we got. So share their face. Make sure you share their flyer. Pretty much every week for Missing Monday, Paula Wade's sister is sharing missing flyers, not only for her family, but for a bunch of other families. And there are other people who share things for Paula and Brandon with the hashtag Missing Monday. So every Monday, if you're on Twitter or other social media platforms, type in the hashtag Missing Monday and go through your feed and see who you might be able to share out. And their faces are usually in there somewhere, almost always. I'm actually not sure if they haven't been at any point that I've ever looked. But anyways, yeah, please make sure that you share out their face. It's so vital. It's so important. And if we had more public pressure to ensure answers on this case, to demand answers from the public, rather, I really think it would help a lot. And we want to do that in the most respectful way possible. There's no reason to get salacious with it. The mission is simple. We need answers. We need to find them, both of them. And I don't know if you realize what I'm saying in this, but this is Valdosta, Georgia. They have been hit so hard with really bad storms the last year or so. And then they were just hit again with all of the recent storm damage that's happened with Helene. So please keep their community in mind as well. Their family's going to be traveling into a situation where they don't even know if they're going to have power. But they're dedicated to go and to find answers for Paula and Brandon. So keep them in mind. Keep the community of Valdosta in mind. Let's hope that they get back on track with power and everything else. And please keep sharing information for everybody in Tennessee and North Carolina, because they all need our help right now. The independent media is the only one supporting these people, getting the word out, sharing their stories, sharing their loved ones who might be missing, and also sharing information that's vital to them that they may not be seeing, like resources, shelters, where convoys are headed, things like that. It's a slippery slope right now because of looters and people being vandalized as they're coming in, but we also have to make sure that those people know where to go and know what to do. Um, so, anyways, yeah, we're going to end it there. I appreciate anybody, again, who listens to the replay, and everybody who's been listening to our other content. We've got a lot of views lately on some of our other videos and stuff, and I really appreciate that. We'll be back. I will hopefully be putting out another video tomorrow on the civil suit for Harmony Montgomery, that was initiated by the Harmony Montgomery estate, who her mother Crystal Sorey is the head of. They are suing DCFF or DCYF, the state of Massachusetts, or no, sorry, it's New Hampshire, um, over what happened to Harmony Montgomery. So make sure you come back and check that out. All right, everybody, have a really good night, and I appreciate anybody who came in and listened to me go on and on about this. All right, have a good one.